So, a very warm welcome from my side, and thank you very much for having me here. It's a real pleasure to be here. It's my second time in the Basque Country. I think back in 2012 I was here in the course of the TCI conference, and I still remember this place as really outstanding, and I enjoy having the possibility to be here. Basically, where I'm from, I think everybody is from the heart of Europe, as you are, we are, and we are in Upper Austria also from the heart of Europe. And Upper Austria is quite a little area which accounts for 1.4 million inhabitants. And basically, Austria has around about 8 million inhabitants. So we account for 70% of the population, but for 25% of Austrian industrial production and 28% of Austrian exports. So we can say we are a little bit the powerhouse of this field. And basically, before I want to go a little bit more in detail on the smart specialization strategies, what issues we were addressing and what maybe also challenges we were addressing, I want to go a little bit more in detail about our company. I'm from the business agency of Upper Austria, and our idea is more or less being the one-stop shop if it comes to business ideas and bringing them down to market. So as we already heard, so we want to have our companies in the driving seat if it comes to innovation, but also in close collaboration with research and bringing them together in the whole value chain. So basically, these are the core activities what we deal with. On the one hand, we had already the discussion that we are facing shortcomings if it comes to highly skilled people. And we in Upper Austria have a situation up to 3 years from now that we had more or less full employment rate. And right now we have almost around about 5% unemployment rate, but the problem is still the society is extremely changing and we cannot really catch up with the needs of the industry as we would like to do so. So one of our activities is to find skilled people from all over Europe to settle down in our area. We have in our clusters and networks around about 2,300 partner companies. These are companies who basically pay membership fees. So for us, a member is really somebody who's committing by paying and not just saying, I'm a member and signing some nice piece of paper, but really showing clear commitment. Basically, we have a department dealing also with promoting innovation. What does this practically mean? So if you want to go for an EU fund for specific funding schemes, we support them at writing the proposal, doing a checkup if the criteria are fulfilled and so on to increase the success rate of the companies. Another one is the topic of cooperative projects where we bring companies together who cover different areas from the value chain, and we want to help them developing new technologies, new services, new business models in specific areas which are important. We support around about 30 startups annually, and we also conduct so-called Supplier Innovation Days. What does that mean? We are the door opener for our companies, so we bring our companies to the headquarters of BMW, of Volkswagen, or for instance to Ford in the States, where they can present themselves in a one-day event to present their innovations to the key players. We had now a couple of months ago a Supplier Innovation Day at Sapco at Iran. So we also look out for areas which might be of interest in the future. At the moment, we are negotiating with Russia, but this is a little bit complicated right now. So we do not know if this will really finally work out. So it's a very broad area of activities. And also we support companies who are willing to settle down premises in Upper Austria to find a location, to support them and guide them through the whole process of administrative issues to be quite easy and to settle down in our area easily. And because of our big boss is the Minister of Economics and Research, we have also direct access to politics if needed. So this is just a quick overview about some figures. As I said, we support companies to settle down in our areas. 60 really settle down annually, more or less. We have also a huge bunch of events, what we organize, around about 300 a year with about 12,000 participants. Support the companies also in the field of intellectual property rights. This is an issue where we put a lot of emphasis on, because when we support cooperative projects between companies, we also have to make sure that they are on the safe side if it comes to cooperative issues, and not that there's a discussion at the end who belongs which part, and that might be a problem as such. As I said, 132 cooperative projects are supported, 30 startups, and a bunch of supplier innovation days, what we do annually. Here is just a brief overview about our structure of our business agency. And what might be of interest, we have more or less 3 departments who are at the front, at the customer. This is the department of the location management, which really go to the companies also abroad to bring them to Austria. And also the department of clusters and networks, where we have now 8 clusters and a network. So quite a broad portfolio of activities and services. And then we have the department which is dealing with funding support. In parallel, what I marked a little bit in red is the Department of Strategy. This is the department which is responsible for the development of the smart specialization strategy of Upper Austria. So basically, we have more or less 2 departments, or more or less the departments on company level to really get to the knowledge from the companies, and parallel a department who's drafting then the smart specialization strategy. So to say, as we already had to have the companies in the driving seat, so they can really interfere and give their inputs if it comes to smart specialization ideas and approaches. A brief overview about our clusters. So we had around about 2,300 partners, mainly SMEs. And we conduct about 2,000 company visits each year, where we go out to the companies, identify their cooperation needs, bring them together then in joint cooperative projects. And since 1998, when the first cluster was set up, this was the automotive cluster, we have done more than 529 cooperative projects, like technology development mainly. On the right side, you find the key issues where we are actually focusing on, and interestingly, these key fields where we are focusing on are also in line with the smart specialization strategy of our area. And it comes to light that we have, on the one hand, our different clusters from the automotive, plastics, mechatronics, timber and furniture, medical technology, clean tech, ICT, human resources, food, and also Software Park Hagenberg. It's a University of Applied Science and also a business incubator. And they have, on the one hand, their standardized value chains, but also cross-cooperate between different topics. For instance, our automotive cluster is really strong in the field of autonomous driving or smart mobility. This is a big issue where we focus on. In the field of the mechatronics cluster is strongly focusing on the field of advanced manufacturing, where we also developed a specific maturity model where we can measure the readiness level of companies in the field of advanced manufacturing, identify where they should be or should develop to, and when we have identified the specific gap, we can derive trainings for them, how they can improve and get better off. And this is also in joint cooperation with universities in our area as such, so where we really bring the knowledge of our industry jointly together with our universities. In the field of medical technology, we help companies who have nothing to do with the medical field to enter the medical field. It can be the field of ICT or whatever, but often you have huge hurdles in this field, in the medical field to enter it, and here we have different tools and support schemes that we can help them to enter this specific field. Then we have circular economy as a big issue, big data, food and packaging, so a broad field where the different clusters focus on, and each cluster has an own advisory board, up to 12 people, mainly from industry and 2 or 3 professors from academia, so that we can really be at the forefront of innovation, that the universities can tell us where we have to focus on, and on the other hand, the company knowledge is also integrated respectively. We are also gold-labeled clusters and also focused on international activities ranging from around about 40 EU projects or national projects annually, or I think right now we have running 35. We initiate or are involved in lectures and different international activities, so we have a broad portfolio of international activities, but not just on an intermediary level, but also for our companies as such. But I think the best thing what can happen to you, and I think we had it already, is a good crisis, because it forces you to question you, to think out of the box and to do something different. I think what is quite dangerous when you're already playing in the Champions League. You do not know that, or you're not capable to be the winner of the Champions League, but still, well, you're always in the Champions League, so no need to change because the rest is much weaker than you are. So I think this is but if you're really on a very low level, then you always have new goals and you question your approaches all the time. And I think to being good, but not really, let's say, top of the food chain is, I think, the most dangerous field because you do not question your approaches too much, and this could be a possibility then really to avoid that you get down there as we were. It was also a crisis in the 80s and at the beginning of the 90s where our steel industry had big problems. They had to lay off people. We had strong labor unions and they were not really ready for change as such. And now it changed the other way around. So we have for instance, we have the First Alpine, which is one of the world market leader in specific steel areas. We have, if you are driving a BMW of the 5 or 7 series, then more or less your engine is developed and produced in Steyr. So all the diesel engines in this field are developed and produced in Steyr. But also in other niches, when you look at firefighting cars from Rosenbauer, they are produced and developed also in Upper Austria. So a broad area of bigger and smaller world market leaders. And the question is, what actually happened that we catched up from this valley of death up to now? I think the key thing is, and here I love this Chinese saying, is if the wind of change are blowing, some build walls, other windmills, and I really support the windmills approach. So really changing your perspective, looking out of the box or get rid of the box and trying to find new approaches and new solutions. And how did we practically do it? Sorry. It was quite a lucky time, also in the middle of the 90s, when 3 people from our area sat together. This was the Minister of Economics, the head of the Chamber of Commerce, and the head of the Chamber of Industrialists, and said, well, we have a big crisis. We want to get more independence from the central government in Vienna, and what can we do? So they came across the books of Porter and this idea of, back then it wasn't called smart specialization, but focusing on your strength areas and agglomerating the knowledge. And they said, well, this could be an approach what we want to follow. So basically, there were different issues one had to think about. First, you need a vision and a clear visionary thinking where you want to develop your areas, but you have to overcome a bunch of so-called gaps. If you want to make your companies ready for the future, it is very important that the research or the research does understand the needs of the industry, and that they give more or less you the knowledge that you can catch up from an industrial perspective as well, that they train the right people for you, and that you have really the skilled people on stake if it's needed, but also that you have the right funding schemes and capital possibilities to get the money, the funding support and so on, if it's needed to really take the next step if it comes to innovation. Another issue is the government gap. You need access to governmental support structures, and it's in our case we have more or less direct access to our minister. So consequently, when we have the feedback of our 2,300 companies and say, well, they are really facing these and these challenges, because we do customer satisfaction analysis on a regular basis, we can really reflect and discuss with them and say, well, I think we need some adaptations in the one field or the other. And there is the need for cooperation between the companies as well, including having a international perspective. And what we heard earlier before, if really the regional powerhouses of Europe more or less work together, it's sometimes even easier than cooperating maybe with your neighboring region in your own country. So it can be helpful also to look into other countries, what they learned, and share best and in particular worst practice cases. Here I just summarized some ideas, and it's just not focusing on cluster strategy, but generally also on smart specialization strategy. There has to be a knowledge, good knowledge between the different areas and fields which cooperate together, a dense network, or also a joint language of understanding, and also also positive incentives. So why should I actually work together? What is my benefit that I share knowledge with another one who might benefit from my knowledge? What do I get back from him? And here we have a bit a mentality in Upper Austria is if the neighbor's house is burning down, I help him shutting down the fire instead of just being happy that my house is not affected. So basically supporting each other in this respect is quite helpful, and these points I think can be quite helpful to set up a respective smart specialization strategy. We started doing research to identify the areas where we are actually strong in. One counts for the average level of specialization all over Austria. 1.5 accounts for the average level of specialization in Upper Austria. And then we looked at the area where we were in particular strong. You might ask you, and in the majority of them, we set up clusters, cluster management organizations over the time. And you might maybe ask yourself why we haven't set anything up in the field of textiles and clothing. And the interesting thing is we looked on the one hand on our strength areas, but also the fields where we thought here we will be really even strong in 10 or 15 years from now. And maybe if we would do this kind of study again, we wouldn't get rid of the textile field right now, because while with smart textiles and so on, it's really a big issue. But back in the middle of the 90s, we thought, well, it will be anyway produced by the Chinese, so it's not our business anymore, even so we are that strong, and we still have with Lenzing AG also a very, very strong company in that area. But yeah, this is the thing, so not just focusing on the areas where we are strong right now, but where we also see possibilities for the future. When we did all this research, we then started implementing the first strategic program back in 1998. And right now we are running the so-called fourth strategic program. All these strategic programs set up on the previous strategic program, and the first one was focusing very much on the things like technology, professional qualification and location marketing, but also in particular on setting up a cluster management organization. So this was more or less setting up clusters as such. followed by the next step, which was extremely interactive, where we had interaction with more than 250 experts in specific areas, stakeholders, to identify the fields where we should focus on funding schemes, on etc. And also we put a lot of emphasis on the professionalization of our cluster organizations, followed by the third strategic program, which then put a lot of emphasis on mechatronics, ICT, life science, innovative materials, logistics, renewable energy. And this is more or less the strategic program as it looks right now, because first of all, we try to look out of the box. So we looked, what is Europe doing? To say also, they have the H 2020, they have the grand societal challenges to tackle. And also we integrated the research, the Council of Research, Technology and Development. It's an advisory board of the Austrian government in the field of innovation. And these are people who are not paid for their work, but really do it on a voluntary basis. And they cover the whole field. They are from research, they are from business, and so on. So quite a broad range of fields are represented. And there is also a Council for Research and Technology on Upper Austrian area level. And this covers then, for instance, representatives of the universities of applied science, universities, then also issues such as industry representatives, but also intermediaries, and they try to challenge our government with good ideas, innovative approaches, and so on, where we should put our emphasis on. And it was always clear that we focus on production in a wider range because, well, this is more or less the backbone of our industry. And basically, at the end, these four core strategies have been identified: location development, industrial market leadership, internationalization, future and emerging technologies. And I try to get a little bit more in depth what this actually means. Location development is on the one hand an approach for scientific people, but on the other hand also for business, really to bring the best business minds here to Upper Austria, but also from a scientific point of view, and here again focusing on our core strengths and core competences. But also we want to be really a knowledge-based business, focus on knowledge-based business models, and also to adapt our production processes very much. So if the topic of advanced manufacturing is a very crucial issue, so we had, for instance, some years ago in 2012, a conference on megatrends. So we set up a conference on megatrends, but didn't really focus on something specific. And then this was really cool because we invited the key politicians, also the Vice Chancellor of Austria was there, the ministers, and so on, and also from industry. And then Elgar Fleisch, a professor from ETH Zurich, who was more or less the godfather of augmented reality, held the speech there and told us more or less, if you don't deal with this issue and do not catch up on this topic of advanced manufacturing, you can shut down Upper Austria. So it was really quite an issue. And this really caused a lot of dynamic also in our area to say, well, we have to do something on it. So we in our cluster had one person who was then exclusively dealing with this topic of advanced manufacturing, doing research on the different topics, driving to the cradles of advanced manufacturing, like Rüschlikon or Kaiserslautern and so on, and always brought our ministers, our industry, and also the media with them to really get some momentum on this issue, and later on derived from these, let's say, smart specialization strategy where we also focused industrial market leaderships, or later on also on future emerging technologies. We focused, or more or less we set up funding schemes who exclusively helped our companies to catch up on this. on the one hand, bringing people from education to the industry, so they were trained in the field of advanced mechatronics, advanced manufacturing, and then there's a funding scheme bringing these students at the end of their studies to the companies to make them ready for advanced manufacturing, and where they also have then more or less a coach who is joining them for the process so that they can help the companies to get advanced manufacturing ready. So internationalization is also a very, very important field for us, where we want to exchange with very strong areas, strong regions, learn from the best, and also catch up in areas where we still see a lot of level of improvement, but which we identify as also core important areas. And so I think long-lasting, sustainable cooperations between important areas is quite crucial. I don't know. So finally, 5 fields of activities have been identified. These were the topics of industrial production processes, energy, health and aging society, food, nutrition, and mobility and logistics. And in these fields, how did we identify the activities there? And we, first of all, had on the one hand a top-down and bottom-up stakeholder process with the different boards and councils, but also we try to align them with the activities on European level, and also be aware that this whole value chain or this whole innovation chain, education, research, and economy should be integrated. And also for us, it was very important that these fields of activities were so precise, with clear topics and measures, that we could really get something on the ground and not just more or less stopping on some level and say we are now smart and specialized, but we do not really know how to get something out of it, or do not know what we finally get out of our activities. This is more or less one slide where I try to bring all these different activities together. So we have on the one hand these 5 core activities like industrial production processes, energy, and so on and so forth. Then the 3 activities like education, research, and economy, and then bringing them together with key activities, what we do, and everything embedded in the whole approach of digitalization, which we see as one of our backbones of the future. And I can give you one example where we tried in the field of education, because we try to get stronger and stronger in the primary, secondary, and tertiary education. We set up, we went to the Austrian railway organization and asked them if we can have not a train, but where we all sit in, I don't know how to call it, doesn't matter, so such a piece of a train. And then we went to the first Alpine and said, well, do you provide us a place where we can put this kind of wagon, this wagon? And our idea was, we set up a more or less, and then went to the industry, and they filled it in with a lot of technology and so on and so forth. And now the students are running this kind of wagon. So they train other students, like pupils from other grades, in this specific technologies and so on. So it's like run by pupils, and they train pupils from other areas and from other levels. So our idea was to bring them together with technology and to inspire them that technology is nothing, not like some complex thing, but something which makes really fun and where we should really push our emphasis on. So the idea was really to start from the early beginning with the pupils, bringing industry in it, matching the different research fields together, and to get out of the silos and to cooperate. And after more or less 2 years, we will put this wagon to another place. We haven't decided yet to which one, and we will fill it up with other topics and so on, but the key idea will continue as such. I don't know, I'm pushing very enthusiastic today. Okay, but anyway, still too much energy. So this is one slide which gives you a quick overview about what this whole system looks like. So we have on the one hand our topics like the core strategies such as industrial production processes, internationalization. They are all supported by this triple helix and feed it in our key areas for the future. And what we tried now was to set up so-called funding schemes for these 5 key areas to get it on the ground. I don't know. But anyway, but before I want to share with you the process, how this strategic program, the last one, has been set up. So we were involved in this S3 platform, so we already registered it back in 2011, then got great support from the people from the OECD who had a workshop with us jointly in Upper Austria and to identify, are we barking up the wrong tree or are we on the right track regarding our ideas, what we had on our strategic program. Then, based on the feedback we received from them, we started to develop the strategic program and also did first stakeholder meetings where we integrated all the different key players to identify what are their thoughts, what their ideas, what are their missions, and how does it fit to the previous project or strategic program as such. And then we did a call for expression of interest where everybody, all companies, all intermediaries could come up with clear ideas, clear focuses, clear project ideas, what they want to have supported in the upcoming years. And we got a response of more than 550 ideas and approaches. Based on this, we continued developing our project or our program, and then we asked the Austrian Research Institute and the UNEUM Research, two national big organizations, to evaluate our project program, if this fits or if there are some areas we should focus more or less or so on. The feedback was quite fine, and consequently we could quickly start with the program. And right now we are in the evaluation process of the program. Already got quite some feedback, but it's not formally published yet. So nothing I can share right now. but it was fine. So was not a complete. Was quite okay. And in the course of more or less starting from 2014, or let's say at the beginning of 2015, we launched specific calls where the companies could, or also research institutes could apply to get funds in specific core fields of strengths to get more or less the industry adapted or getting research done. And this is more or less one of the calls. One of the calls was starting in spring 2015. It was a joint call between 2 fields, the industrial production processes and mobility and logistics. And by that time, 28 projects were applications we received, 10 finally funded, and this covered a volume of 4.1 million, a funding scheme or funding rate of 75%. And we made sure that the evaluation is done on Austrian level, not on Upper Austrian level, by the Austrian Promotion Agency, and they are also responsible for more or less monitoring the whole funding scheme, so that we are out of the system, because otherwise somebody says, well, you're just supporting my friend, and so it's nothing obvious. So here we tried to step back a bit. The next one was a call dealing with health and aging society. Also, we received 19 project applications. 8 of them finally were approved. The project volume of 1.5 million and also 75% funding rate. The funding rate sometimes varies a bit depending on more or less who's the leader of the application. So research institutes get a higher one. Small and medium-sized companies get also a pretty high one. If it's a bigger company, it can be reduced. So it's a little bit more complex than these couple of slides, but just as a first impression for you, and also centralized, managed from Austria. And then then there was still an additional call dealing with mobility, and here we managed to set up the first, let's say, cross-border, but officially cross-regional call between Upper Austria and Styria, so to have more critical mass, because in the field of logistics and automotive, Styria is extremely strong, as we are, and then we thought it makes more sense if we pool sources in this regard and generate a joint call. But it's interesting because then you need not just our Minister of Economics and Research who's saying, well, we go for these, but you need another Minister of Economics and maybe additional research, and to say, well, that maybe Styrian money is going to Upper Austria and the other way around. So there are some issues to make sure that everything is running well there. But yeah, still, so more or less a project volume of 4 million euros could be approved. And right now the system is that we have more or less launched 160 million if it comes to research and business related volume, and overall the whole project had then a volume of 1.5 billion euros, because the industry was heavily investing in these kind of approaches and funding schemes. And in total, because there were specific funding schemes who were exclusively then on education-related fundings, maybe also in the field what I told you with this train approach or so, these were then something with also 140 million. So basically, we could generate 275 million euros from public funds, and overall a volume of more than 1.5 billion. I think I'm already almost done, because this I wanted to skip anyway. So if you have any questions, and I do not want to fight with you because of the break later on, so I want to be quick, maybe then we are ready for questions, and you are earlier in the lunchtime. So thank you very much for your time.